Hi, this is Darlene from Digital Photo Mentor. In this video, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the McFun software called Luminar. They have two versions available. One is a standalone product, so you can buy it all by itself, or you can operate it as a plugin for Lightroom. In this particular video, I'm going to walk through the standalone version, and if you're using Lightroom, I'll do a separate video for you, so check that one out just below. Historically, McFun has been only available for Mac users, as the name indicates, McFun. But this week they have some exciting news as they're about to launch Luminar and their popular Aurora HDR software for Windows users as well. The neat thing about it is, and why I'm really excited about it, is you can purchase Luminar separately. You don't need a subscription model. So people who are adverse to the Adobe model and you don't want to pay monthly, you might want to take a look at this. The price point is absolutely fabulous. It's under $100. You can buy it and have it on your computer as long as you want. And the other thing that really is exciting for me is the user interface, and I'll show you that when we get started, is if you are an absolute beginner, you can start with panels that are simpler to use. So if you are an advanced user, you can open up more panels and have more options. And it's really designed to walk you through learning the process of processing. So let me open up the software and some images, and I'll meet you back here in a second. Okay, here we are inside of Luminar. So when you open the standalone version, this will be the screen that you see. So you'll notice the first thing you'll see is you've got some options here. If you're new to Luminar, you can go and watch some video tutorials. You can download the PDF user guide. You can get some presets. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Or you can also work with HDR, Aurora HDR. Okay? Don't worry about it if you don't have any of those things. The simplest way to start is to actually open an image. And there's a tab right here, a button that says Open Images. Okay? You can also get to that at the top. Just like a lot of other software, there's menus at the top, okay? So you can look at what each of those do. And if you read through the manual and watch some of the videos, they will walk you through how to use all of those menus. But let's open up an image. Okay, so I've set up some images in a sample folder. If you don't know where they are, you'll just need to navigate to a folder. The processing of Luminar, you can handle a RAW file or a JPEG. In this case, I'm working with RAW files from my Fuji X-T1. It does take a little bit of time to open the RAW files and a little bit more time to process them than it does a JPEG, but the effort is well worth it because you have much more information to work with when you're working with a RAW file. So if you're just beginning and you're still shooting JPEGs, that's totally fine. You can open JPEGs in Luminar as well and work with them. Just know that if you open a RAW file, you have more to work with. Okay, so our file is open, and for this one, I've started with a landscape photo. I know that lots of people like to take landscape photos, and it's a popular thing that you may want to process this type of image. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is I'll just kind of walk you through what you see on the screen. So you see your image here in the middle. Over on the right, you see a histogram, which is just like the one you might see on your camera, or if you're using another type of processing software. You see something called layers, which if you've ever used Photoshop or you may have heard about Photoshop layers, is something that you can do to layer the effects and apply it to certain parts of your image. I'll show you how to do that. It's a bit more advanced, so you don't have to go there if you don't want to. You can even turn it off. So if it confuses you, just use this button up here at the top. It looks like two sheets of paper to turn it off. Okay, so layers, go bye-bye. If you don't want the histogram, you can turn it off as well with the little graph icon here at the top. And then you also have something called filters. Over here you have two little buttons that will control what shows on the screen. Okay, so the things you see at the bottom, all the little thumbnails, are presets. So these are things that you can apply to your image. I'll show you how they work. They're super simple if you want to get started that way. And then this one is your toolbar. Okay, so you can either hide the whole thing or show it. Okay. Down the very right hand side here are some additional tools which do some minute fine tweaking of your processing on your images. Okay? Again, you don't have to use them if you want to just keep it simple and apply some presets. So the first thing I'm going to do is apply a preset to this image. So when you start with Luminar and you click down here where it says dramatic, okay, I've added a few extra ones that are available on the Luminar website. When you first open it, you're going to see 6 basic ones. You'll see basic, outdoor, travel, street, and portrait, I believe, and dramatic. Okay, so you will see those 6. If you don't see the others, that means you can add them, and it's really easy to do so. Okay, if you just click on more, it will actually take you to the page on their website where some more presets are available. Okay, so my browser is opening. There are several free ones, and there are some that are for purchase as well. Okay, so if you want to add to your repertoire a bit later, you can download these and add them. And it's really easy to install them. Literally all you have to do is double click on the download and it puts them into Luminar and installs them for you. Super easy. Okay, so let's go back to Luminar. So I'm going to start with the basic presets first. Basic is usually a good place to start. You can view all of them if you want as well. And you can also add favorites. Okay, so I have added a couple into my favorites list. And as you go along, if you find that you're using one a lot more than others, just click the little star. So down here you'll see next to this one, there's a little star. Over here's a little star. If you click that one, it's just going to get added to your favorites. So I've added Vivid. Let's go over here and check. Okay, so now Vivid is added there. If I don't want it anymore, I just remove it. Okay, so favorites are just designed to keep track of the ones that you use and like a lot, right? So in the basic ones, you can scroll back and forth to see them all, and it gives you a little preview of what your image is going to look like if you apply that preset to this image. Okay, so this one here, I'm going to try Mid-Image Enhancer. Okay, it takes a second, you see that it's processing, and then it appears on your image. Okay, so a couple things really quickly. If you don't want to see all of this stuff, we can change what's called the workspace. Okay, so this one here, we can go to Quick and Awesome. Okay, so basically it just simplifies the workspace and it doesn't show you a whole bunch of stuff. Keeps it simple for you, that it allows you to make a few tweaks but not get too overwhelming. Okay, so this one here, I've applied Mild Image Enhancer. Okay, I can dial it down. Not showing. Okay, you can see what it's doing here. Okay, so by going up to 100, down to 0, you can see what it's doing. So I really like the effect that it's had on this image, so I'm going to leave that. Okay. Now, one thing you do want to keep in mind is that if you keep your layers turned on, layers allow you to build upon one effect with another effect. Because if I choose a different preset, let's choose outdoor, because this is an outdoor scene. Okay. I'm going to choose Auto Smart Enhancer because it looks like it's going to give me a punchy color. Certainly did that. Okay, it's replaced the other preset. Okay, so if you click on a new one, it doesn't add them together. It replaces it with the one you've just clicked on. Okay, so if you want to add and layer them, that's what layers are for. So you're allowing it to build upon from one to the next. Okay. So I think I like this Smart Enhancer one. So I'm going to apply that. I'm going to back up a moment and I'm going to undo all of this and I'm going to apply it as a layer. Okay, so to add a layer, you just add this little plus thing here, add a new adjustment layer. Okay, and then I can apply my preset just like I did before, but now it's on a new layer. Okay, so what that allows me to do is to use this little eyeball, turn it off and on, okay? Or I can change the opacity, which is the same as the slider down here for amount. So amount, okay, watch the opacity slider, it's the same thing, okay? So it's how strong do you want this effect to apply? So I kind of like it somewhere about there, okay? I don't want the greens to go too crazy, okay? Now that that's applied, you can see all of the various filters. Okay, so Luminar uses what's called filters to adjust your image. So it doesn't change into a different module like it does in Lightroom, and it doesn't do what's called an adjustment layer or individual adjustments. The presets are basically a combination of various filters built into Luminar. Okay, so it's a quick way to get some looks for your image, or you can go one by one. Here in the highlights, here in the tone section, you can turn each of these off and on with the little orange button. Okay, to see what they're doing, and you can tweak them. Okay, it's really simple. because you're working on a raw file or you're working on your JPEG, it's not applying any of those things to the original. It's only just doing an on-screen version for you to see. And then once you're happy with it, you can save it as a new image, or you can even share it to your favorite social media, such as Facebook, for example, right? Directly from here. Super simple. So if that is something that has stumped you in the past, it's super easy using Luminar. Right? You do have to link up your Facebook account, and once that's done, super easy. Right? So now I can adjust all of my different sliders here for each of the filters that have been applied. Under the tone filter, you can see highlights. Okay, so the highlights are the areas that are brightest, not quite white, but the brightest. And I want to see if I can darken that sky in this picture. So I'm going to pull it almost all the way down to the left. So look what it's done to the sky. Really, really nice. I like what that's doing. Okay. Blacks, I like to have a little more black in my image because it gives it a little bit more contrast, adds a little bit more saturation, and I feel it's a little punchier. So I'm going to give it a little bit of black. Okay. Now the saturation is turned up. Foliage enhancer. Okay, so that is a great one. So look what's happening here. If I turn it all the way up, a great way to learn what's one of the sliders, what they do is to literally just put them up to 100 and then back down again. And you could see what it's doing here to the greens. So I'm not so crazy about how far it's taking it up here. It's looking a little bit neon. I'm not crazy about that look, but I want to change the hue a little bit. So I'm going to leave it overly saturated and then just play with the hue a bit. So hue is kind of like the tint. Is it going to be more blue? Is it going to be more green? Let's go this direction. Okay, this is looking more fall kind of foliage. I like that a lot better. So let's leave it sort of this direction, and then I'm going to bring the amount down a little bit. Okay. So subtle is usually the way that I recommend going anytime you're processing your images. Subtle is it's not going to be sort of in the viewer's face. Okay. Polarizing filter. This one is unique to Luminar. It's really cool. Okay, so polarizing filter is like you would put a polarizing filter on your lens. So let's do all the way with this one and see what it does. It's going to try and cut reflections, and it's going to try and enhance things like sky and blue things. So look what it's doing to the sky. It's doing a really nice job. It's doing a really nice job in the water. So I'm actually going to turn that one up quite high. Now, if you don't want to do any of these, you can literally just apply the preset and say, okay, I'm happy with that, and I'm good to go. Okay, and save your image out how you want to save it. Okay. Adjustable gradient. Okay, this is another one that is unique to Lightroom, or to Luminar, pardon me. And this is another one that's unique to Luminar. It's similar to some things that you can do in Lightroom, which is my confusion. Okay, is it allows you to do different things to the top of the image and the bottom of the image at the same time. So this is great for things like sunset or scenes like this, where I've got a sky that's bright and I want to darken it. So I'm actually going to move this up. You can even tilt it, right? So you can kind of match the angle of the horizon, right? Then it allows you to adjust the top, you can see this here, and the bottom separately. Okay, so if I turn down, for example, the exposure in the top, look what happens to the sky. Isn't that great? Okay. I can turn up the vibrance in the sky. I can turn up the exposure in the bottom. Okay. Don't necessarily want to do that, but it really looks great with turning the exposure down. Okay. Maybe I want to warm up the bottom a little bit because I don't like how blue it is. That gives a nice tone. Okay. So you can adjust the bottom and the top completely separately. Maybe let's do a little more contrast. Excellent. Okay. So it's looking pretty good. Now, you can also do a before and after. Okay? There's a little eyeball icon up here. Okay? If you hover over it, you can see that it's a quick preview. You can also use your backslash key to do the same thing. And there's also a compare mode, which is a slider of a before and after. So let's try the eyeball. Okay, so you have to hold it down if you're clicking it. So before, after, or I can use my backslash key, before, after. So if this is what your image looked like coming out of camera and you're not really happy with it because it's kind of blah. I remember this sunset being much more spectacular and the colors being amazing, that golden light on top of the mountains. This is closer to what I remember it looking like. Okay. I'm going to reduce that vibrance on the bottom just a little bit. So vibrance is similar to saturation. but it applies more in the colors that are less saturated, more in the sort of, let's call them normal colors. Let's just bring that back down to normal. Okay, so the slider, you can activate it by clicking on it, and you get this before and after. So you can literally just grab it and see the before and the after. Awesome. Okay, turn it off again. Okay, you can also do things like cropping your image. Okay, so if you hover over here on the right, you can see the tools that are available. You've got a clone stamp. So if you've got some dust spots, you've got an erase tool, you've got denoise. So if you've got some noise in your images, and we've got a crop tool. So I'm not crazy about this branch over here on the right. I'm actually going to crop that out. And I might come up a little bit from the left as well. Get rid of some of that blue sky over there, and a little bit from the bottom. I like to keep most of that reflection though. Okay, so when you're done with your crop, I applied a free crop, but if you want to keep it in a certain ratio, you can do that. Look at that. Even if you want a Facebook cover or something for your Facebook, it'll tell you what proportions to make it. How great is that, right? Click apply. So it's going to apply the crop for me, and now that nasty branch is gone. Okay, let's look at the before and after one more time. Pretty nice, right? So all we've done here is literally clicked on one preset, played around with a few of the sliders and the filters, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so if you're done and you're ready to save your image, you have a couple of options. Okay, so if you hit save under the file menu, or Command or Control S, right, you can save your file out as what's called a Luminar file format. Okay, so it's going to save all the processing information that you did on your images. And if you click this box down here, Save History, the next time that you open it, all the steps that you just did will still be there for you to undo if you want to go back a couple of steps. Okay, if you don't save the history, it's a little bit smaller file, but I highly recommend saving the history so that you can come back later and play with it some more. Maybe you're not done, or you want to apply something else, or you want to undo something, right? So that's a save, right? But we still haven't got a version that we can put on our Facebook or we can send to a friend, okay? So that's where share comes in. Okay, so if you go to share to, email, it's going to pop open your email program, whatever program you use, and look at that. There's a file of that image in a nice size. It's not too big, and then all you have to do is who do you want to send it to, right? So you type in your address. I'll just send it to myself as a test, and off it goes. Oh, tells me I need a subject, test photo, okay, and away it goes. Just like that. Okay, so no more having to worry about creating a preset, resizing, remembering what size to use for email. It's all done for you. Super easy. Okay, likewise, if you want to share your images on Twitter or Facebook or Flickr, all you have to do is set up a link to those accounts, and it'll just walk you through the process of setting it up the first time. So I've already set my Facebook up, and a little dialog pops up that tells me, okay, I'm going to share it with friends. I'm going to share it on my timeline, and I'm just going to type in a little message to go with it, and off we go. And it's going to do the same thing. It's going to size it, post it to Facebook for you, right? As you saw, you even have a choice of saving it to a particular album if you want. So you can make an album on Facebook of photos from a trip that you did, for example, and then just keep adding photos into that album, right? Super easy for saving and sharing, okay? You do also have the option of saving out a JPEG. So let's say you want to send this image to your favorite lab, okay? That's where export comes in. Export is a term that sometimes is a little bit confusing for people if you've never done an export before, and literally it's just a save as, okay? So think in terms of if you're using Microsoft Word or any other program on your computer and you want to save a copy, you're going to do a save as, okay? So think of export as save as, okay? Then in here, you have choices of what are you going to call it, okay? You can name it if you want. You can add some sharpening, you can resize, or you can leave it the original size. Okay? If you're going to print your image, I would recommend leaving it full size. Okay? Color space is something that's a little bit more advanced. If you're not familiar with what it means, then I would suggest leaving it at sRGB. Okay? If you're going to send your files to a lab, most labs will be able to work with that type of file. The other two are a bit more advanced, and if you're not sure if your lab can use those, you want to ask them what their color space is that they use. But if you're not sure, to play safe, just choose the first one. Right? So then I'm going to save this. I'm just going to say full size, so I know that that's a full-size JPEG of that image, and I'm going to save it in that folder. Okay, so it's super easy to save your images, send them by email, upload to Facebook, and save it onto your hard drive as a JPEG. Okay, so once I've done that, anything that I've done in Luminar is now applying to the original raw file, and it's creating a full-size JPEG of that image. Let's have a look and see. Okay, there it is. Right? So there's the JPEG with the effects that we've done in Luminar applied. Right? You can see how lovely it looks. Right? Now, if you want to get more advanced, okay, so again, that is a pretty basic use of Luminar. If you want to get a little more advanced, you can add some more layers. Okay, so let's add another layer. And you can add either a filter. Okay, so all the filters that are available in Luminar are listed here, just like presets, or you can sort them by color, detail, tonal enhancement, and so on. Okay, you can also add them to favorites with the star, just like you can on your presets. Okay, so let's say I want to punch up the detail. Okay, Detail Enhancer is a really cool filter. Look what it does on the before and after, just showing here. Okay, this is something that I found that it's even better at doing than Clarity in Lightroom or other programs. So I'm going to add a Details Enhancer. You know, if you want to add more than one filter, you can just click the plus sign and then keep going. Okay, so let's add the Details Enhancer. And structure is kind of similar, but a little bit different. So I'm going to add that one as well. Okay, and that's about it. Okay, so if you have a foggy day, you can use that. Let's see. There's another one I'd like to. Creative. Oh, dramatic is a really nice one. So let's add dramatic. Now you'll notice if I click on the name, it's going to close the filter panel, whereas if I click the plus sign, it keeps it open. Okay, so now what we've got here is we've got Details Enhancer, Structure. I'm just using my mouse to scroll through them, and Dramatic. Now there's nothing been applied yet because I haven't pulled the sliders, and I'm able to do this all by myself. Okay, so we're going to pull up the Details, Medium Details. Let's turn off the presets so we can see the image a little bigger. Okay, so it takes a moment, again, because it's working with a raw file. If you're working with a JPEG, it will probably go a little quicker. Okay. So if you want to see what this is doing, anytime you see a little orange dot, just click it and it will turn that off and on. Okay, so I kind of like what it's doing on the trees there, but not necessarily on the sky. Okay, I don't want the sky to start to look too overly sharp, but I like what it's doing there. You can pull up the highlight protection, which might help the sky. So it's going to basically not apply that effect as much on your highlights or the light areas. Okay. So that looks pretty good. You can do before and after again. Better. I like that. Okay, structure. So structure, let's see what it does. Again, let's go all the way. Wow, that's kind of crazy. So that's a little too much for me, but let's see what happens if we only do a little bit. Okay, I kind of like what it's doing, right? If you just go up and down, I kind of like what it's doing in the reflection a little bit and a little bit on the rocks too. So I might want to just do a little bit. And let's see what dramatic is going to do. Let's do our structure before and after. So again, I don't like what it's doing in the sky, but I'm going to show you how to fix that. Let's see what dramatic does. Okay, so dramatic, it's kind of fading it out a little bit. I'm not liking that one as much, but it's doing a neat kind of job on the mountains. Probably not going to use this one if I decide I don't like it. I'll leave it down at 0. So if you decide you've added a filter that you don't like, you can pull down this little menu and literally just delete it. Okay. So now I've got this layer which has the Details Enhancer. Let's just add a little bit more so we can kind of take it to an extreme here so you can see what it's doing. And when I turn the eyeball on and off, it's going to turn both the Detail Enhancer and the structure off. So anything that I've applied, all the filters I've applied on this layer are being turned off and on so I can see what it's doing. So I don't really like what it's doing to the sky. I like what it's doing to the trees and the reflection, but not the tree on the left either. I don't want to highlight that one too much, and I don't want to highlight the dead trees. So I only want to apply these things in a couple of selected areas. Okay? If you've ever used Photoshop and you're familiar with masking, it can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're a beginner. But let me show you how easy Luminar is to mask this layer. Okay, so over here on the right, on the tools bar or panel, whatever you want to call it, is a masking brush, okay, and it shows you the keyboard shortcut in the bracket, which is B. So I'm going to type B, which now highlights the brush. You can see it's orange, okay. So orange means that is the active tool. Okay, just like around the layer, you see that there's an orange outline here. You see that this is orange. So anything that you see that's orange means that it's active. Okay. Over here, you see that the brush is active. And I'm just going to zoom in on the screen so you can see this. So right now it's a plus sign, and this is where the brush is going to apply. So anywhere that I paint, it's going to add this effect. Okay, this is very important. The second that I touch the brush to the picture, all of the effects on this layer are going to disappear except where I paint. Okay, that is the default that Luminar has set up, as it eliminates all of the effects and you get to paint in where you want it. How cool is that? Okay, it's set up as a default at 50% opacity, meaning sort of the strength that you're painting with. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. You can use your square bracket keys, okay, to make the brush a little bigger or smaller, okay. And then I'm just going to click on the trees here and the water, because I want to apply that structure and detail to the trees, the green trees, not the dead ones, and the water. So watch what happens when I click. Okay, so now look, the effect is gone, but as I paint, it's painting it in where I'm touching the brush. Okay, so I might want it in this grass over here. And let's say I painted the bridge. Let's sparkle up the bridge a little bit. And let's make the brush a little smaller. I want to get these mountain tops nice and crispy as well and get some contrast in there. Get that. Perfect. Okay. Let's say I painted this tree over here and I decided I don't like that. I don't want to highlight that tree. Okay. So you can actually undo, right? Let's take a look at our mask. Okay. The mask, what it's doing is just like if you put a mask on your face, where you see the black is hiding the effects of this layer. So anything that you've applied here, any of the filters you've applied is only coming through where it's white, just like in a mask where the eye holes are, okay? So it's like the hole in the mask, it's showing this layer. Anything that's gray, it's only showing it sort of faded out a little bit, okay? So I don't want it to apply on this tree anymore. I'm just going to change the brush to this other one, the black one. You see that it's now the eraser brush, and you see a minus in the middle, okay? So now I'm going to erase that effect from this tree, okay? Or anywhere that I've painted it that I don't like it. I don't think I like it right there in that reflection either. Okay, so now let's just turn that layer off and on. So before it was applying to the whole picture, now it's just applying to the trees and the bits that I decided to have it apply to, right? And once again, you can save your image, you can export it, and you can share it by email or Facebook or however you like, okay? So that's how simple it is to use Luminar. If you're done, let's open another image, and I'll show you a black and white conversion. Okay, so let's open something that's going to be exciting in black and white. Okay, let's open my cigar smoking lady from Cuba. She's fascinating. So once again, it takes a moment to open. Okay, so there she is. All right, so now I want my presets back. Let's just show that. And if you don't want to see any of this stuff with the filters, if it's all confusing, just turn this whole thing off. Let's just use the preset. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, let's see if we have any basic ones. There's nothing in. There's a classic black and white. Let's see what that does. A little bit sort of on the dull looking side. Let's see about dramatic. I bet you there's something in there that might look good. Oh, this looks nice. Okay, let's try dramatic look. Okay, so this is kind of a faded out black and white look. Oh, I really like that. Let's crop this image again because I don't like this bright area over here. I tend to make my life easier. Instead of trying to retouch out areas like that, I'm just going to crop it out. I'm not so worried about the ratio and keeping the perspective or the size the same. I might come in a little bit on the top. Let's maybe even, let's leave her some space. Okay. Let's come in a tiny bit on the bottom, something like that. Okay, so all I've done is click one preset and crop the image, and there's a before and after. Pretty nice, right? If we want to make some tweaks, guess what? There's our filters. We can adjust as we so fit. Okay. Let's take a look at the vignette. This is actually a cool feature of Luminar as well, is it allows you to place the vignette. So if you're not sure what a vignette is, let me turn what's called the feather down to 0. Okay. So a vignette is something that darkens the edges of the picture so that you look more in towards the subject. It helps you to direct the viewer's eye more to the subject. But in this case, look what's happening. The subject is off center. She's off to the right, but the vignette is in the middle. So we want to fix that. Okay. So what I've done is, this is a little trick, I use this in Lightroom as well, is turn the feather all the way down to 0. So what that means is feather is how much it gradates or takes, how long it takes to fade from the dark part to the light part. When it's at 0, it's literally a line and you can see the circle where the vignette is. So turn it down to 0. And then you can adjust the darkness, the size. We can make it rounder, okay, either direction. And we can also place the center, okay? So right now it's putting it in the center of the image, but we're going to put it off center. So I'm actually going to click about here. Let's see what that does. Okay, so now the vignette is more centered on her than it is on the image, right? Well, let's maybe put it a little bit lower so we can get the top of her head. Takes kind of a little bit to play around with it. But let's turn the feather back up to somewhere in the middle. Okay? Make it not quite so severe. Now look what it's doing. Right? So now it's darkening around everything but her. Really like it. I really like that ability to place the vignette off center. It's kind of like using a radial filter if you've used Lightroom, but really simple to use. Just click it, place it off center, off you go. Okay. So we can play with the filters if we want. I kind of like it the way it is. I don't really see anything that I want to adjust here. Maybe the highlights, because her side of her head is a little bright. So maybe let's bring a little more detail back into her highlights. But it looks really good. Okay. Awesome. So if you like that, we can leave it at that. Or we can apply another layer. Let's try a black and white. This time let's try a filter and let's do a black and white conversion. Okay, so when you do a black and white conversion, what it does is, because I've started with a color image, it allows me to adjust all of these colors that from the original image one by one. Okay, color filters, which you see right here, okay, off below, means that if you click on red, for example, it's like applying a red filter on black and white film in the days of black and white film. So what it's going to do is it's going to lighten anything red and darken the opposite colors like green. So that kind of did a nice thing to her skin tone. Okay, orange is going to do something similar. The blue is going to be the opposite. Okay, so notice how it darkened her face. Not so much as what we want there. Okay, green and so on. Okay, so red is nice. Red is going to lighten reds and oranges. Anything that's a warm color is going to lighten reds and oranges and darken blues and greens. So if you have a sky, blue sky showing, it's actually going to darken your sky as well. So let's see what that's doing. Yeah, that's doing something nice on her face. So let's go with that. And then if you're still not happy with it, you can adjust based on the individual sliders as well. Okay. We can do exposure, we can add some contrast, you can adjust the blacks and the whites. I'm going to add some black, okay, which gives it a bit more contrast, and maybe even a little more clarity. Let's give her some real crunch. Okay, she's got some really interesting character in her face, and this is really helping to bring it out. Okay. So let's do before and after. Started with that. Okay, now we've got that. So what happens if we decide we don't want the black and white? We can just turn the layer off. It's that simple. Okay, so that right there is the power of layers. Is if I had applied this on top of the other one or added the black and white conversion onto the other layer, the only way I could undo it or remove it is to remove the conversion completely. But if I just want to hide it, I just turn it off for a moment. Right? You can also save out both versions. So I can save a black and white version by going save, right, or export and saving a JPEG as a black and white. So let's give that a try. Okay, so I'm going to save black and white JPEG. And let's say we're going to save it as a smaller one this time. So I'm going to save it as 750. Now it's pixels, okay? So it's going to be a little bit smaller size, maybe something that I want to email to somebody later, right? Turning the layer off, let's do it again. Save it one more time. So I'm going to go, let's just call it faded this time. Okay, and then let's go and see if it's in my folder. So there's the black and white JPEG, and there's the faded one. Okay, so now I've got two versions of the image saved out, and it was super easy. Just turn the layer off, save, turn the layer back on, save. Okay. You also have the option of turning the opacity down on the layer, so maybe I just want to fade it a little bit more. You can do that as well. Okay, so we want just a hint of color coming through. Okay, so the amount that you can sort of tweak and play with your images is infinite. But the way that they make it simple to use here in Luminar is if you are a beginner, I think you will really enjoy working with Luminar. The sliders are intuitive, the names are intuitive, and if they're confusing to you, just go hop over and watch a couple of their tutorial videos, and you should get the hang of it fairly simply, okay? Fairly easily. So that's all I'm going to show you in this video today. You see me process a black and white, we've processed the landscape image, we've saved to Facebook, and we've saved and sent an email directly from Luminar, and you can see how simple it is. So I've actually started using this program a little bit on my own images, and it makes me want to go back and process some of my old ones again, and I'm using it as a Lightroom plugin. So I do the basic processing on my images in Lightroom first, and then I actually open it in Luminar as a plugin. So it works a little bit differently than that. I'm going to hop over to a second video. If you are a Lightroom user, you might want to watch that one as well. So if you are a beginner and you're not using Lightroom, I would suggest that you end here. So thanks for watching. I will put some links to McFun's website so you can check out Luminar for yourself. They have a free download and a trial available so you can test it before you decide to purchase it. I highly recommend that you give this program a try, especially if you are new to processing, if you haven't ever used any processing software before, or maybe you're using just Apple Photos or something similar, Windows, on your Windows machine. Check out Luminar. Super simple to use. Inexpensive to get started, and a free trial, so you really can't go wrong. Check it out, and if you have any questions, please post them below. See you soon. Take care.